Howdy, gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang channel. Thanks for joining me once again. It is October, Halloween is rapidly approaching, and that makes for a perfect time for me to discuss why you should play Delta Green from Arc Dream Publishing. Now, I'm going to talk about the system and the setting for Delta Green. And as I do so, I am going to flip through the Agent's Handbook as well as the Handler's Guide, which are both available together in a single slipcase set. So that is what I received from Arc Dream Publishing a few years ago for review. So let's swing on over to the other camera because here I've got the Agent's Handbook. So I do want to mention before I jump on in, although I received the slipcase set with both of these books from Arc Dream Publishing for review a few years ago, neither I nor anyone else affiliated with the Gaming Gang has received any sort of compensation for me to share this video with you. These days, it's very, very important that you know that. Also, the Agent's Handbook is the player-facing book. So if you are a player and you're hoping that your game master is going to pick up Delta Green, or maybe you have a handler already running Delta Green, it's all right for you to check out this book. When I move into the Handler's Guide, I would definitely recommend tune out then, because I'm going to discuss some aspects of the world of Delta Green. I'm going to try to stay spoiler-free, but there are going to be some spoilers involved. And you don't want the surprises and scares ruined because you were watching this video. All right, let's jump on in. So this is the player-facing handbook. So this is kind of the player's handbook for Delta Green. If you're not familiar with Delta Green, it is a role-playing game of Lovecraftian horror and conspiracy. I like to describe Delta Green as a hard R-rated X-Files with a whole lot more blood and gristle and grue. It's really twisted, and I really, really dig Delta Green a lot. Setting-wise, Delta Green is this shadowy government organization that was set up following the raid on Innsmouth in 1928. Of course, you know it from the story Shadow over Innsmouth. And up until 1969, it was this top secret government organization until there was an operation which went horribly wrong in Cambodia, and the government pulled the plug. That's the official story, and of course, Delta Green is no more, or is it? Now, I will point out, I reviewed the conspiracy for Delta Green a couple weeks ago, and that is a remastered edition of the original supplement for this edition of Delta Green, and it is excellent, and it gives you a lot more background about Delta Green, especially in the 90s, because that is a source book if you want to run Delta Green campaigns during the 1990s, whereas the Agent's Handbook and the Handler's Guide is set more today, or 2016-ish when they were written. So as far as the system, if you are familiar with Call of Cthulhu, you are going to slide right on in to Delta Green. Because as I had mentioned, this was originally a supplement for Call of Cthulhu back in the late 90s when it came out. Now it's its own role-playing game, but it still shares tons of DNA with Call of Cthulhu, especially 7th edition Call of Cthulhu. So if you aren't familiar with the latest edition of Call of Cthulhu, this is a percentile-based action resolution system. So we're still going to have our traditional role-playing game attributes. We've got our strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, charisma, and POW. Talk about POW in just a moment. You're going to roll your 3 six-sided dice to get that range of 3 to 18. Maybe you'll roll 4 six-sided dice if you're a player and throw out the lowest. and that'll get you your 3 to 18, and then you'll multiply it by 5. We also have different skills, and you pick up these skills based on what your occupation is. And we've got loads and loads of occupations in the Agent's Handbook, most of them coming from governmental agencies, because about 80% of the agents in Delta Green, and agents are what you refer to the player characters as, come from a government agency. Could be the FBI, could be the CIA, CDC, hell, it could be the US Post Office. But that doesn't mean you have to play agents that have some sort of government connection. There are a wide range of possible careers that would be recruited for Delta Green. The organization itself is tasked with protecting the United States from mythos incursions, as well as other incursions such as extraterrestrials. Although that's actually Majestic, which is another faction, another organization that is still funded by the US government, at least in the 1990s. Now it's not so much. There's a whole history of Delta Green that you can really, really go down a rabbit hole with, as with all conspiracies, right? And I'm not going to get into all of that, but it's really, really interesting. Another aspect that I'll get a little more into when I talk about the Handler's Guide is the fact that my campaign world for Delta Green is going to be vastly different than your campaign world for Delta Green. And I'll talk about that in a little more detail. So essentially what we're looking at with Delta Green is we have attributes, we have skills, and we have a percentile chance to be successful with the attribute or with the skill. Now, of course, the handler could add or subtract modifiers, but for the most part, normally you are looking to roll your skill or attribute or lower on percentile dice to succeed. There are critical successes, there are critical failures, but for the most part, a majority of the time, it is going to be succeed or fail. Then we've got our skills. Once again, same exact thing. We've got a percentile in that skill, and it is based off of what your occupation is, what your career is. So someone who's in law enforcement is going to have a completely different skill set than someone who is making threat assessments for the CIA. Very, very cool how that works. And your agents all don't come from the same government organization, because you'll have these small cells that Delta Green puts together for their operations. We do have some changes, though, to the 7th edition Call of Cthulhu rule set. And a couple of major ones that I really like are the sanity. So with sanity, with our POW points, that's kind of how attuned we are with the universe. So higher POW points gives you higher sanity, gives you higher willpower points, which players spend to overcome challenges. But another thing that's cool is we have the sanity, which is just like Call of Cthulhu. So if you have to check against your sanity, you would roll your percentile dice. In Call of Cthulhu and in Delta Green, you're looking to roll lower than or equal to your sanity score. Now, where it kind of gets a little different is with the sanity loss and the effects of sanity loss. Because in Call of Cthulhu, we have a percentage of your sanity. If you lose it all at once, then you're temporarily insane and you could get an affliction. And there's some complexity to it. Where Delta Green with sanity loss, we have breaking points. So for a breaking point, what you would do is you would take your sanity and subtract your POW before you multiply your POW by 5. Of course, just like in Call of Cthulhu, as characters lose sanity, it becomes much more difficult for them to pass sanity tests. Something else I really like is with combat, we have weapons and a lethality rating. So as opposed to having to roll big handfuls of dice for damage from, say, an artillery round or a rocket, we have a lethality rating. You would roll the hit, and let's say, for an example, it's an agent and they've got a machine gun they're spraying a group of deep ones who are attacking. Well, for each deep one who's hit, you're going to roll the lethality on percentile dice. And as an example, let's say it's 15. So if you roll 15 or less, then the target is reduced to 0 hit points, as opposed to having to roll big heaping handfuls of dice for every hit. Now, if you don't happen to roll less than or equal to that lethality rating, you're still going to take those two 10-sided dice you just rolled for the percentile dice, add them together. Those are the number of hit points that are lost, which still could take the target out of action. And this works with the player characters as well. So it's not only NPCs and monsters and things like that that have the lethality applied to, it's player characters too. So those of you out there who think to yourself, wow, you know, Call of Cthulhu is really a meat grinder. Well, you ain't seen nothing yet until you take a look at Delta Green. And I gotta say, I think that's kind of a selling point for this as well, because as cool as Delta Green is for a campaign, it really works very, very well for one-shots too. So the Agent's Handbook is also loaded with equipment and different organizations, different occupations, and breakdown of the various different skills that the agents get. So once again, as I mentioned, this is all player-facing, and of course, the Game Master is going to use it, or I should say the handler is going to use this too. Then we have the Handler's Guide, which if you are a player, this is where you're going to tune out, because even though I'm going to try to stay spoiler-free, there's going to be some spoilers just by me paging through this. Now, one aspect of Delta Green you may have noticed, even taking a peek through the Agent's Handbook, is the presentation is quite different. That a lot of the information is provided as releases and typed up documents and intel reports, as opposed to just traditional layout like this. Now, we do have traditional layout, obviously enough, but a lot of it is presented like this. And it will take a little getting used to if you are just someone who normally spends time with very traditionally presented graphic design. Once again, you get used to it. It's not that big a deal. Now, the Handler's Guide is jam-packed with the history of Delta Green, as well as other organizations which are out there both helping and hindering Delta Green, as well as rival organizations such as Majestic. And something I really dig is that if you want to get kind of the classic Delta Green experience, you pick up The Conspiracy, which is a remaster of the original supplement updated for this edition of Delta Green. And I just reviewed it a couple of weeks ago, and it is excellent. It is awesome. But one of the cool things is how things have changed in the world of Delta Green. So things that were givens in the 1990s, these days may not exist. So Majestic is a big deal in the 1990s Delta Green world. Nowadays, not so much. And Majestic is actually a government organization, once again, also top secret, that was set up in the wake of the Roswell crash, because there were aliens and there were debris fields from alien spacecraft. And Majestic, big spoiler alert, actually entered into an accord with the Greys And in exchange for technology and information about both the United States foes and friends, the government allows them to abduct people, experiment on people, as long as they're returned. Yeah, sure. And cattle mutilations and things like that. And one of the things I find really, really cool is that, once again, huge spoiler alert, the Greys aren't real. They are biomechanical constructs of the Migo. And the Migo are using the Greys to manipulate our government. Some of the conspiracy stuff in this is just wild. And another aspect of Delta Green that I like with the Handler's Guide is that we have various different factions that are going to be utilized far differently depending on the sort of campaign you're running. And that's why I mentioned my world of Delta Green is going to be vastly different than your world of Delta Green because of how we decide we want to focus our campaigns. Now, there are loads of published adventures. So if you want to experience the world of Delta Green as told by Arc Dream Publishing, you certainly can. But this is a vast sandbox for you to utilize these factions, these creatures, these enemies, these great old ones, however you would like. And I love that there isn't just one sort of campaign that you're going to run if you're running Delta Green. So we do get a lot of information about the various factions, such as the program, which is Delta Green. And then we also have factions like the Outlaws, which are an offshoot of Delta Green, who are still vying for the same goals, maybe. Once again, all depends on the sort of world of Delta Green you're creating, the sort of campaign you're going to run. But I love that we get the information in this book about, okay, so this is what's going on. This is what Delta Green knows. And this is what the Outlaws know. And the three of them are never the same. And of course, we get information about other factions as well. We get a lot of advice about running Delta Green and the conspiracies and the various different layers that are uncovered. And Delta Green cells never know of other Delta Green operatives outside of the ones that they're working with. So there is all this deniability going on. Really, really interesting. I say it all the time that, in my opinion, if you are looking for a modern era Lovecraftian horror role-playing game, this is the role-playing game for our times because it is so enmeshed in various different conspiracies. And we know how conspiratorial people are these days. So it fits in very, very nicely to the real world. So there's loads going on in the Handler's Guide. We also get some adventures too, operations, I should say. And that is what we find with the Handler's Guide. Once again, trying to stay spoiler free because not even as a player, but as a game master, I don't want to ruin the surprises and the enjoyment of delving into the backstory and the fiction of Delta Green. I will point out that there are folks out there, and I completely understand, every gamer's got a different budget. And the Arc Dream Publishing releases are a bit pricier than other publishers out there. I know the slipcase set for the Handler's Guide and the Agent's Handbook goes retail-wise these days over $100. So if you are curious about Delta Green and you want to just dip your toes in to see if this is right for you and your players, allow me to recommend that you pick up Need to Know. I do not know, as strange as this sounds, I don't know if Need to Know is still available in print like this. I don't know. I have not seen it on the Arc Dream Publishing website, but it is available absolutely free over on DriveThru RPG in PDF. And this is over 40 pages. It is the quick start guide, essentially, to Delta Green. It also includes a sample operation for you to check out. And there are adventures, as I mentioned before, there are a variety of published adventures for Delta Green. Many of them can be run simply with Need to Know. You don't have to have the Agent's Handbook and the Handler's Guide to run those operations. All you need is Need to Know, which once again is absolutely free in PDF. Now, the adventures, operations, whatever you want to call them, for Delta Green, for the most part, are available in PDF. And depending on the length, usually they're around 30 pages or so. They carry price tags of $4.99 for the most part in PDF at DriveThru RPG. So if you want to dip your toes into Delta Green, check it out, see if it's right for you and your players, and actually enjoy some of the backstory of Delta Green, which is very cool. You can do so absolutely free, and then pick up one of the operations. One of the operations for $4.99. Take it to your table, check it out, see if you're going to enjoy it, if your players are going to enjoy it, because I highly, highly recommend Delta Green. I think it is fantastic, both from the production quality end as well as the gaming content end. But I will throw out a quick disclaimer. Delta Green is certainly not a role-playing game that you're going to want to roll out there for your 12-year-old kids. It is dark, it is grim, it is gritty, and it is adult. It is. If you find most Chaosium Inc. Call of Cthulhu adventures to be pretty intense, well, you can notch up the intensity level with Delta Green. So I do want to let you know that. Once again, don't be busting it out for the kids like you might Call of Cthulhu. But still, Delta Green is phenomenal, and I certainly recommend you should play Delta Green from Arc Dream Publishing. All right, that is it for this time out. If you like the video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already. And if you do subscribe, don't forget, ring that bell, because it'll not only let you know when I upload videos such as this Why You Should Play, it'll also let you know when my live stream, the Gaming Gang Dispatch, airs Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evenings right here on YouTube at 7 p.m. Central. I will point out, as of this recording, I am taking a week off, so the live stream will return October 17th at 7 p.m. Central. Of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more you will not find here on the YouTube channel. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer. Thank you very much for watching. And until I see you next time, here's hoping all of you out there get to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang.